welcome to another week on my allotment. It's been a funny time really for me. On my first ever video, 15 videos ago, I said I was sort of semi-retired. That was an aspiration more than the reality. The reality is, and I can't complain, it's lovely to be well employed and I am frantically busy. So the reason I said I was semi-retired was that the plan was to go down to 4 and a 3-day week alternately, and that just hasn't happened. And again, no complaints. I've got lots of customers, people want me at work, so it's a nice position to be in. But the semi-retirement thing hasn't happened, and I mention that only because it means I just haven't been able to get up the plot. I've had the odd hour here and there, and you know, that's not what I'm used to, and you know, and I'm missing it. But there you go. I said on a previous one that, you know, life and conditions sometimes get in the way. There are people here that just can't get up for weeks, so I'm not that badly off. But there's no doubt this is where I like to be. I have had the fortunate, or I've been fortunate that I've been able to show my family around here recently. We had my eldest son and his partner and little daughter Lexi that were lucky enough to get up here, and we had a picnic up here. It was a nice day, and interestingly, little Lexi, who was born in Canada, because of the time of year and so on, she'd never touched grass. And of course we're surrounded by beautiful grass that the golf range keeps very manicured, so she got her shoes off and had a lovely little play in the grass, which was wonderful to watch. And then my parents were up this last weekend. We had a nice weekend with them, visited a few places, so I've been able to show them around here. So yeah, life is not all work, but it has been that I haven't been able to get up here. I'm waffling a bit, but anyway, what I mean is it's a pleasure to be here. I've been here a while now. It's now 10 to 5. Again, I beat the sun. It's glowing just there. It is just behind me. Be up soon. Actually, it's really cold. It's 7 degrees centigrade on the my van thermometer, and it's the 21st of June. That's really chilly. It's a wonderful time on the allotment. It's that time when, you know, all the early work was done in April, May, and you've put everything in and you hope you've got the timings right. And I said to you before, we've had a lull. The weather this year, for the people who are watching from the UK, you'll know what I mean. It's been the most fickle year. Back in February it was almost a heat wave. Certainly for February it was. It was 18 degrees centigrade up here. The chap just down there had his shirt off, and it was not out of place. It was a lovely warm period, and we've had several relapses, and then the weather's got warm. We've had a very, very dry spring. For that time of year, all of us were ferrying water to and fro the plots, but since summer broke, it has not stopped raining. Now, one of the upshots of that is that I've been able to stop watering everything, and because I haven't been able to get up here for quite some time now, that's actually done me a favour. One of the downsides, and of course every occurrence and event has an upside and a downside. The downside of that is the slugs have gone mad. I've not got many runner beans that have managed to get up beyond them, and of course I grew an excess of runner beans and French climbing beans and so on, and the first lot got eaten, so I thought that's okay. I've got plants in reserve, so they've gone in and they've been eaten. You can't, you know, I don't have the time and the effort to keep doing replacements. Now, you know, people have suggested to me I could put seeds straight in the ground at this time of year. Well, if the plants that are that big can't get away from the slugs, there's absolutely no way that a seed in the ground, if the mice don't eat them, then it won't get away from the slugs. However, that said, I've got 2 plots here. I've got plenty of ground, and there's enough of them that have got away that I'll have to make do with what we've got. So yeah, it's been a funny last few weeks. It's been absolutely tipping down. That said, you know, it does mean everything is growing like mad if it hasn't been eaten. So what I thought I'd do today is just give you just specialise a little bit in all the viruses and the things that affect the crops. Now, I've said before in a previous video, that's not all bad news. The reason my crops get so many different rusts, smuts, blights and so on is because they're completely free of any man-made pesticides, fungicides and herbicides. So, you know, there's an upside to that. But I just thought today I'd show you around and give you a little idea of some of the problems. And of course the black fly, I forgot the black fly. So yeah, that's what I thought I'd do. I was up early this morning. Does anybody else find that if they set an alarm about 10 to 15 minutes before the alarm goes off, they wake up? That happens to me. I get up about 6 o'clock most mornings. I set my alarm this morning for 4 o'clock. It never went off. At 3:45 I was awake. I had that little bit where I wasn't quite sure where I was and what day it was, but then I tuned in and realised I had today off because today's Friday. And I almost leapt out of bed. I thought, yes, up the allotment. But I don't remember the last time my alarm woke me up. It's a really interesting thing. It just never, you know, I always wake up. Does anybody else find that? Or does everybody else have a mini heart attack when the alarm goes off? Yes. So, without further ado, I'm looking across the, I'm looking beyond the camera at the golf driving range, the grass of which looks immaculate. It's actually better than my lawn at home, I think. And it's covered in wildlife. Of course, it's just gone, well, it's nearly 5 o'clock now, and the wildlife is used to having this place all to itself, and I've come along and disturbed them. But there's stuff, there's hares, I can see hares, masses of seagulls, crows. I mean, you can probably hear the crows. So yeah, I've got to have a cup of tea. I get up, I had my breakfast because I need something in here, and I try to make sure I don't forget everything. So I'm up here with everything I think I need for the day, but I've got to have a cup of tea. I've got a tongue like a zookeeper's boot. So I think I'll stop here, stop my waffling and endless talking, and put the kettle on. And then set to. And actually, I believe, looking at the screen, that the sun is just... It's almost worth leaving the camera on, isn't it? Just to watch that sun come up. So fortunate to be here. Actually, later today I'm going to walk up the top of the field and just show you the view, looking down on all the plots and off out to the Severn River, or the River Severn. Why are some rivers the River Severn and some are the Severn River? Don't know. And when does a river or a stream become a river? And yeah, I am waffling now. Right, let's get that kettle on. Right, I've pulled back my piece of Enviromesh just to show you my blueberries. Now again, I've got 4 plants, blueberry plants in the back garden, and in here are 4 plants. I think that's too many in this small space. However, the Enviromesh is over them because I lost the whole crop last year to the blackbirds, but I'm hoping that you can see that they are absolutely laden. And we picked the 4 different plants that they crop at different times of the year. Not sure if that's working. I don't really mind. The main thing is we have a absolutely bumper crop, and I'm hoping with the Enviromesh on them that the birds don't get there and we do. So yeah, really pleased. So far so good. A positive. Nothing seems to eat the leaves. There's no leaf curl. There's no brown spots on the leaves. They couldn't look healthier. And of course they've loved this rain. So yeah, big thumbs up for the blueberries. And actually, while you're here, excuse me sniffing, I just thought a picture paints. So there's some of the spring onions looking wonderful. Trouble with having this raised bed has got a mesh over it, a butterfly netting mesh. And of course once you put the mesh back on, it sort of crushes the tops of the spring onions. But it doesn't kill them, and they're fine. And more lettuce in there. Lettuce Lolo Rossa. So I can recommend both those, the Ishikuri spring onions, which taste wonderful, and the Lolo Rossa lettuce. Some people prefer green, some people prefer red lettuce. The beauty of this one is it's sort of multicoloured. You get a bit of both. I hope you can see that. So yeah, the lettuce is good this year, and the spring onions. And that takes me neatly across, seamlessly, to the Matador spinach. And I said earlier it had bolted, but actually, and spinach I think always bolts, and it's surrounded by more spring onions. I'm still picking the leaves. So although, you know, I think that's just normal. I think once you've planted them out, they bolt. Fast or slow, they bolt. But whilst they do that, you can still take a picking. And I've planted more up in a seed tray, and when these have really gone and the leaves aren't producing, I shall chuck these on the compost heap and put the next lot out. And I would expect those to bolt as well. But while they're bolting, we're picking. And completing the circle almost is this blackberry Reuben. I've put it up against this frame I've built around my seat, and again the sunlight probably isn't helping, but it's a mass of fruit. They're all green at this stage, but it's a promise of a crop to come. And these ones, I think I'm going to be able to pick these sat on my bench. What could be better? In fact, these ones have grown through the frame, and I should be able to pick those with my teeth while I'm sitting there. You gotta love this. Now, pests and diseases. The number one after, it's not number one, is it? Slugs are number one. After that, number two is black fly. And I've shown you this before, and people have commented they've never seen a black fly infestation quite like this. I spoke to Bridget and asked her to come over and have a look at this, and she pointed out the blindingly obvious to me. Why have I planted them in a large block? All I've managed to achieve by planting them in such a thick crop like that is there's no passage of air inside that little eco environment I've created there. There's no wind, there's no movement of air, and the black fly have been able to use that, and really it has ruined the crop. I'm not going to lose any sleep when I say ruined the crop. I hope you can see that, in amongst them there are pods forming, and they'll have beans in, and I'll get some crop, but there's no doubt. I think Bridget's right. I mean, the generally accepted wisdom, and God knows why I did this, I really can't think. I really don't think. I've put them in one large block without thinking, and of course when you plant them in rows, that allows a wind to pass through, and I'm sure it would have minimised the infestation I've got. So a lesson for me there, and anyone who grows them and is watching, that the received or the perceived wisdom is grow them in long thin rows of maybe 2, maximum 3 plants wide, and you wouldn't get it anywhere near as bad as this. The proof of that pudding is if I can take you across to the other side of my plot. These were the plants that wouldn't fit, so I thought, well, rather than throw them away, I'll just stick them over here on a bit of spare ground. And alright, they've fallen over and it all looks a bit ragged. However, look, no black fly at all, and there's a good crop on these. In fact, some of those there could probably be picked. So that proves the point, I think, that, you know, Bridget's right. I've planted them too thickly, and these ones are absolutely fine. If I'd have staked them a little better. Now, one crop that does need staking, planted in a block, is a sweet corn. And I've just put the sticks in those because the wind will hit those at some point as they get above the ground, and they're fine. So yeah, the first one, black fly on the broad beans. I've learned a lesson there. I've made a fundamental mistake. I won't do it again. Let's move on. Right, my second observation is rust on the garlic, and that is really bad. Now, I have to be honest, I don't know much about this. Would have helped if I'd done a bit of research before I videoed it, but I haven't. Now, I'm going to guess that despite the rather ugliness of the rust, that my crop of garlic will be all right. I don't know that, but I'm about to pick one and find out. But it's really bad, and of course the weather's been damp and humid, which is the exact environment that these pustules of rust need. And it's really hit the crop bad. I've never seen it quite like this. I'm sure others will say that as well. However, the bulbs have thickened up quite nicely. I can see, you know, they've pushed the soil apart, and I can see. So we're going to have a look. These rows here are a variety called Marco, and they've all gone to seed. So these are the ones we're going to use first. I grew these ones over here, Germidor, before, and we've only just finished using those 7-8 months after we picked them or harvested them. Now, although these have got the rust as well, as you'd expect, they haven't bolted. So I'm hoping that, you know, the rust aside, that these still might store. If they don't store, we'll just have to eat an awful lot of garlic very quickly. So I'm going to pick one now and see how it goes. Okay, well, I hope you saw that. I won't know till I get home and check the video, but I've just picked that one. That is, oh, blimey. You won't be surprised to hear there's a really strong smell of garlic in the air. Now, again, I don't know, and if anybody can tell me and knows more than I do, please post something in the comments below, but that feels good. It's definitely created the cloves. It's bulked up quite nicely, and although it's, you know, it doesn't look pleasant with all that rust on it, I'm going to take that home and we're going to use that in the next forthcoming week. So there's going to be no drying out. I mean, do they have to dry out? Why can't I just pick that and use it straight away? Please do let me know, because last year I did the conventional thing. When they'd got to this stage, we dug them out the ground. It was a heat wave. I left them out to dry. All this top dried up and turned brown and papery, and we then stored them. And like I say, we've just used the last of them in the last couple of weeks. Now, I'm not going to do any of that with this. I'm going to chop that off about 1 inch from the bulb. I'm going to take it home and we're going to use it, and I don't see what's wrong with that. Maybe you can tell me. So I'm very pleased with that. That's a good looking bulb, as long as the rust isn't, you know, when I open this up, the rust isn't in there and it hasn't affected, them inside, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not worried about the rust. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. And that's no doubt whatsoever due to the amount of rain we've had in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, rust aside, that's a good looking garlic. To a more conventional pest that you will all know about, recognise, and I'm sure detest the same as me, is the slugs and snails. Now this is the French climbing bean cobra. These have been in a few weeks now, and generally I'm happy. So you can see some of them are on their way up the sticks. However, those are French climbing bean cobra, and they've been completely bitten off. I don't know why I'm laughing, it's not funny. But, when you do this allotment and kitchen garden thing, you have to accept a certain amount of collateral damage. And because these things are quite slow growing, or they certainly have been this year, you can see that none of these have got away from the ground yet, and the slugs are having a field day. As I'm walking around my plot, I was looking for more problems and pests, and I can't find any. So that really is it. It's not too bad. The peas are doing wonderfully. Nothing seems to bother the peas. Lots of flowers and lots of pods forming. Won't be long now, but I just wanted to show you these purple snap peas. This one's, I think it's called Magnolia. And this is the King Seed Trial. And I mean, I'm growing sweet peas. I don't know why I bother. You just got to grow these. Look at it, fantastic. Obviously I can't pick the flowers off or I won't get a crop, but they're beautiful. A sort of a lilac and purple colour, two-tone. And I'm 6 foot tall, and these are now just above me, and they're still going up. So I might have to bring Cheryl up here and get her on my shoulders to pick these. But they're wonderful. I mean, yesterday when I was up here for an hour or two, the wind was buffeting them, but actually right now it's very still and they look spectacular. Right, this is the kohlrabi, again part of the King Seed Trial. Purple delicacy, this is called. And never grown that before, and that's a really good example. Wasn't sure what to do with kohlrabi, so I looked on YouTube, and there was an American gentleman sat in his living room and he sliced it up into small finger-sized pieces and just ate it raw. So I should be doing that later, because if I can eat my fruits and vegetables, well, not so much fruits, if I can eat my vegetables raw, I do. Simply because that's the way they get the nutrients. So I've no idea what kohlrabi, what is it good for. I know the leaves, it's a brassica, it's a member of the brassica family, and we've used these leaves. I've already had one already. It was on a par with that, and we use the leaves in a smoothie. And of course, once you put them in a NutriBullet and blend them up in a smoothie, you have no idea that they're in it, and you're just tasting a beautiful fruit tasting smoothie. We put them in with a frozen berry mix, and it's just a very sweet, thick smoothie. So these leaves are completely untainted. Well, there's one little nibble out of that, tiny. But as for the rest of it, no white fly, very little, just a few little. Yeah, I can accept that, and they'll go in a smoothie, no problem whatsoever. Yeah, very happy with that. Kohlrabi gets a thumbs up from me. Beautiful specimen. Well, this is my bed of butternut squash, and I have to say it's looking extremely sorry for itself. Wolfram butternut, these are called. Another one on the king seed trial. And I think a combination of terrible slug damage, wet, cold weather, and without a shadow of a doubt, me putting them out too early has led to the crops going backwards, and they're all but ruined. Now, I do have replacements. So, if I show you, that is a butternut squash, and what's left of it. Now, if I just restrained myself and kept hold of them in the greenhouse, this is what they look like. You know, that couldn't look healthier. A little bit more heat in the greenhouse, kept away from the slugs and the snails. So there's another lesson learned. This time last year we were in the middle of a month-long heat wave. Temperatures up around 28, 29, 30 degrees, and the butternut were about 3 feet high and growing like billy-o. This year, completely different weather altogether, and they've really suffered. Now, of course, I couldn't know that we were going to get this wet and cold weather, but I think I've learned a lesson. Wait until the weather does improve, and then and only then put your plants out. Of course, we've had some lovely weather. Anyway, there's no good dwelling on it. It hasn't worked, but all is not lost because I have some other plants. And of course the problem is, I'm thinking to myself, am I now making the same mistake? If I put these out, the ground is still wet, there's more wet weather forecast next week, am I just making the same mistake and giving more food to the slugs and snails? But you know, it's the 21st of June, we're well into the summer now. At some point something's got to grow. So I'm putting these 2 out today, and I've got another load in the greenhouse as reserves, but they just need to move on. Anyway, I'm going to weed all this now and get that sorted. I watched a thing on the Gardener's World TV programme recently where they went to a nursery where these chaps were preparing hostas for a show, and I can't remember which show and it's not important, but these hostas were immaculate. And as we were watching, I turned to my wife and said, that place must be absolutely littered with slug pellets. Anyway, they mentioned the subject, and it turns out they don't use slug pellets because of their concern for wildlife and their dog on site. And what they did is they made a garlic spray. So they took some cloves of garlic, I'm not sure how many, and they boiled them up and they sieved out the remnants, and they were left with a garlic solution which they used to dilute into a pump spray gun, which they spray over they use it as a foliar spray, is that right? I don't know. They spray it over the hostas, and they said that works. And of course they had hundreds and hundreds of these hostas, which slugs absolutely love. I mean, they will always head for a hosta if they can find them, the tender young leaves. And they were preparing hundreds of these hostas to take to the show to sell and to display, and not one nibble out of them. Now, that's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? So it's occurred to me that I might give that a go. I've certainly got enough garlic to make my own. So I think when I get home tonight, I'm going to try that. I'm going to boil up some garlic, and I'm going to bring it up here tomorrow morning, and I'm going to spray it on the runner beans, the French beans, and my squashes. I've just put 2 new butternut squash plants in the ground. And of course, if I don't do something, the slugs will have them. So I'm going to try that, and I'll see how it goes, and I'll report back to you. I think it's worth a go. It's organic. It'll cost me a couple of garlic cloves, and if it saves all my butternuts and my beans, it'll be a garlic clove well used. So that should be quite interesting to see. I hope it works. I don't see why it shouldn't. If it's working on hostas, why shouldn't it work on other plants? Look forward to seeing that. It's 6:45. I've done so much already. But that internal body clock is telling me, brew time. While I'm brewing up, I thought I'd tell you a story. I read a book recently, one of the most interesting books I've ever read, about sleep. And it was by an American scientist who studied sleep most of his life. And he, as the book, you know, as you'd expect, it relates to all subjects relating to sleep. And one of them, I think it's called our circadian clock. Turns out humans, mammals, all animals and plants have this inbuilt clock in them. So you can tell what time of night or day it is, even when you can't see light. And these mad fools back in the 1700s buried themselves deep inside a cave where there was no light, and they stayed there for weeks and weeks and tried to keep track of time. And it turns out they weren't far off when they came out of the cave. Anyway, sunflowers. Now, I'm not sure why sunflowers are called sunflowers. Maybe it's because the large plate-like flowers look like the sun with the flames coming off. That's probably it. But also, everybody knows that the sunflower itself follows the sun round. Now, you and I would probably think that's because of the light of the sun, and it can tell where the sun is in the day sky. Turns out it's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with this inbuilt circadian clock. And they know this. How? Well, they know this because in the 1700s again, they took a sunflower and they put it in a lead-lined box in a house. So this sunflower could not see a chink of light. And every now and again, they would open the lead box and look at where the sunflower was in relation to the sun. And lo and behold, even with no light, the sunflower was following the position of the sun in total and extreme darkness. Turns out, the sunflower doesn't know where the sun is at all from the light. It has an inbuilt clock, and it knows where the sun will be based on the internal clock of the plant. Now, I personally find that fascinating. You would think it can detect light through photosynthesis. Turns out it's nothing to do with that. Can you still see me? I find that fascinating. Wonderful. In a later video, I'll tell you some more stories from that book. I can't remember what the name of the author was. I'll find out and I'll let you know. But you really should read it. Fascinating. Of course, sleep is part of the trilogy of health, isn't it? And what is that? That is nutrition, exercise and sleep. The holy trinity of health. And sleep is the fundamental cornerstone and bedrock of that trinity. And without good, healthy sleep, you can't be healthy. Anyway, that was an interesting story, not a lecture. I guess that's due west. That is the first River Severn crossing, the Queen Elizabeth Bridge. I think that's what it's called. It's the Severn crossing anyway. Over the River Severn, going out into the Bristol Channel. And that's the farm that's associated with the farm shop and the land that we have our allotments on. And just a little short walk up the hill affords me this wonderful view of the River Severn. At this point it's tidal, and the tide is either coming in or going out, not sure which, with the Liam Bond Golf Academy, my next door neighbour. And then coming across with quite a nice view of the allotment plots with the farm shop in the background. You always know it's good weather when you can see air balloons in the sky. And over there are the beehives where the bees are to-ing and fro-ing to my pond. Wonderful. Well, it's that lovely time of year when you start to get the crop, and I get to take this home. And we'll have that with our salad and our pudding tonight. That's what it's all about. Fantastic. Well, that's it for another week. Thank you very much to those of you who have subscribed. I really appreciate it. One of the first things I do is when I click on my videos every week or so and have a look to see the subscriber numbers are slowly trickling up, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching if you've made it this far, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.